The year was 2022. A vampire decided to become Batman. Nobody went and saw Morbius. A man and a dog somehow became a chainsaw. And phone gaze Sleepy was out to make some moolah. You see, Sleepy had got his hands on a couple of binder pages worth of gold rare Yu-Gi-Oh cards. For you guys that don't know what that means, essentially he had a whole bunch of standard Yu-Gi-Oh cards, only these were slightly more shiny looking. So Sleepy was out looking for a potential buyer when he came across a man who ran a local card shop. Now, the original post didn't actually clarify this guy's name, so we're just going to call him Dan for the rest of this video. Dan informed Sleepy that he was actually pretty low on stock for that particular rarity, and was most definitely interested in purchasing the cards. So after exchanging some details, including the address of the shop, Sleepy picked up his binder, got in his car, and headed for the location. As Sleepy was happily driving along, he began to notice something a little bit strange. Although he'd been given the address of Dan's card store, the more he kept driving along, the more he realised he was actually heading away from the typical shopping district part of town, into a much more residential area. A little bit strange, but Sleepy had nothing but fat stacks on his mind, so he chose to ignore the obvious red flag and kept on driving. He pulled up to the location and looked out the window. Sure enough, he was in fact not parked outside the front of a card shop, he was parked outside of a fairly run-down looking house. Turns out Dan's local card store was just him selling out of his house. Once again, with great big dollar bills floating across his mind, Sleepy ignored the red flag, grabbed his binder, and waltzed on up to the front door. He gave it a knock, where he was then greeted by a rather friendly sounding Dan, and after exchanging some pleasantries, quite happily welcomed Sleepy into his home. Sleepy took a couple of steps inside the house before taking a quick look at his surroundings. The house was a little disorganised and could definitely use a bit of a wipe down, but outside of the dreadful lingering smell of cigarettes and a few items of clothing lying around, all things considered, it just looked like a fairly regular old house, with nothing standing out as particularly strange. Dan led Sleepy through the home, before gesturing him to come over and sit down at a dining table, which already had a couple of empty binders laid out across it. Now, the trade itself was actually pretty straightforward. Sleepy offered a price for his gold rares, and Dan happily accepted it, without any negotiating or bartering at all. He was even kind enough to throw in a couple of extra singles for free. Once the trade had been completed, Sleepy was pretty keen to just get out of the house, but just as he started to get out of his chair, he was stopped by a rather enthusiastic sounding Dan, who politely asked if maybe whilst he was here, he would like to go through some of his other binders to see if maybe there was something he might be interested in. Now, Sleepy clearly only came here to make money, not spend money, but he also didn't want to be rude to the guy who could potentially become a future trade partner, so he decided, screw it, why not? What harm could possibly come from looking at a few Yu-Gi-Oh cards? Dan left the room for a moment before coming back with a whole bunch of binders, which he carefully laid out across the table in front of Sleepy. Sleepy picked up the first binder and opened it up, and began slowly flipping through the pages. As he expected, nothing really in here took his fancy, as again, he wasn't really here to buy anything, nor was there any particular card that he wanted to purchase at the time, so he picked up the pace a bit, skimming through the remaining pages before moving on to the next binder. And then the next binder, and then the next, and then the next, but just as he was about to pick up the fifth binder, he paused for a moment as he noticed something odd. This binder looked a little different from the others. Whilst the other binders looked almost brand new with hardly any signs of wear, this one looked vastly different. Calling this thing well used would be an understatement. The thing was practically falling apart. But this of course didn't deter Sleepy, who once again ignored the red flag and picked it up anyways. As he was about to open it up, Dan gently tapped him on the shoulder to let him know that all the cards inside of this particular binder were not available for purchase or trade, but he still encouraged him to take a look inside anyway. Sleepy cautiously opened it up, A full page of gold rare Burning Abyss cards, just like the ones he had just sold him a moment ago. Okay, second page. Once again, all gold rare Burning Abyss. Okay, sure, maybe this guy just really liked Burning Abyss monsters or spent too much time watching Farfa or something. Nothing too out of the ordinary here. That was until he flipped the page again. The Seal of Orichalcos. Nothing but the Seal of Orichalcos. Multiple pages of purely this one card. Okay, kind of odd, as this card, for those of you that don't know, isn't exactly worth anything, as it's not exactly a competitively viable card, nor is it a high rarity or particularly sought after thing. This card is typically just a bit of a meme card for people that enjoy the anime, as it was featured as a pretty major plot point from it. Other than that, it never really saw any play whatsoever. So after flipping through about 4 or 5 pages worth of the seal, he paused again for a moment as he turned the page to see, yet again, something different. Alistair the Invoker. And not just a page worth, not 2 or 3 pages, not 3 or 4 pages, literally the entire remainder of the binder was just Alistair the Invoker. There must have been hundreds of this guy. He's based on a real person, you know. Sleepy looked up to notice Dan was now pointing at the page. Aleister Crowley? The Black Magician? Oh dear. Dan then proceeded to go on a bit of a ramble, to which all Ben could do was slowly nod his head in response. He explained that black magic was in fact real, and he practiced some himself to various degrees of success, even sometimes managing to summon entities to his home. He once again pointed at the binder before looking Sleepy directly in the eye. I want to make a pentagram. A pentagram of Alistair. 666 Alistairs merged together with my own blood. At this point, Sleepy was a little bit nervous to say the least, and over the next 5 minutes slowly made his way towards the door whilst this one-sided conversation moved in some strange directions. COVID was apparently fake, Ash Blossom users were PDF files, chemtrail conspiracies, some New World Order thing or something, but before Sleepy could find out any more information about that one, he found himself stepping right out the front door before turning around and walking rather quickly straight towards his ride. All he could hear behind him was a shout. Please come again anytime. It's safe to say that Sleepy did in fact not come back again anytime soon. And that is going to mark the end of today's tale. I know this one was a little bit different from the other videos I've made so far, but it just seemed like too good of a story to pass up on, so hopefully you enjoyed it all the same. In case you see this, thank you so much Sleepy for sharing your tale online. And if you too have a story or tale from your time playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Or honestly any other card game for that matter, and would like to have it featured in this series, feel free to write it down in the comments down below. Just make sure to leave enough detail and context so I can turn it into a full video. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And if you'd like to see more stories just like this one, I've created a full playlist of this series, which I'll leave at the top of the description. Or you can click that little card on screen right now. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Laters.